They think you lost because you walked away. But the moment you left without explaining, without fighting, without begging, the power shifted. Women who walk away don't lose. They win quietly. Walking away is self-respect in action, not surrender. Because surrender comes from fear, and walking away comes from clarity. Fear stays and argues. Fear over-explains. Fear waits for permission to be treated well. Clarity does none of that. Clarity recognizes patterns without needing more proof. It notices how many times boundaries were crossed, how often excuses replaced accountability, how respect became conditional instead of consistent. A woman doesn't walk away the first time she's disrespected. She walks away after she has stayed too long trying to fix what was never hers to fix. By the time she leaves, she has already done the emotional labor, the reflection, the patience, the communication. Walking away is not an impulsive reaction. It is a measured decision that comes after restraint has been exhausted. People confuse loud strength with real strength. They think strength looks like confrontation, explanations, emotional speeches, last chances. But self-respect is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't beg to be understood. When a woman chooses to walk away, she is choosing alignment over attachment. She is choosing peace over potential. She is choosing what is over what could have been. That choice requires more discipline than staying, because staying allows hope to delay reality. Walking away requires accepting reality exactly as it is, without sugarcoating, without romanticizing effort that isn't being matched. Self-respect is the moment she stops asking why someone treats her poorly and starts asking why she keeps allowing it. It's when the focus shifts inward, not outward. Walking away doesn't mean she thinks she's better than anyone. It means she knows what she's worth and understands the cost of staying somewhere that keeps diminishing her. She realizes that access to her time, energy, and emotional availability is not unlimited. It is earned and maintained through consistent behavior, not promises, not apologies, not potential change. There is a deep misunderstanding about what it means to fight for something. Fighting is only noble when both sides are fighting for the same goal. When one person is fighting to be respected and the other is fighting to avoid accountability, walking away becomes the only act of dignity left. Staying would require shrinking expectations, normalizing disrespect, and slowly betraying herself. Self-respect refuses to make a home in environments where basic decency feels like too much to ask. Walking away is also an act of emotional maturity. It acknowledges that closure does not always come from conversation. Sometimes closure comes from observation, from seeing behavior repeat itself enough times that words become irrelevant, from recognizing that no explanation will suddenly turn someone into a different person. A woman who walks away understands that clarity does not require agreement. She doesn't need validation to move forward. She doesn't need the other person to admit fault. She trusts her own perception. When self-respect activates, the nervous system changes. She no longer feels compelled to react to provocation. She no longer needs to defend her boundaries. She enforces them by leaving situations that violate them. This is where people get uncomfortable because they are used to access without responsibility. They are used to forgiveness without change. When that access disappears without argument, it forces a reckoning. Not because she wants revenge, but because silence after self-respect creates consequences that words never could. Walking away is also protection. It protects her future self from burnout, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. It protects her standards from erosion. Every time someone tolerates less than they deserve, their baseline lowers. Self-respect refuses that slow erosion. It says no early enough to prevent damage that takes years to undo. It chooses temporary discomfort over long-term regret. There is grief in walking away, and self-respect does not deny that. Strength doesn't mean the decision is painless. It means the pain is chosen consciously rather than endured unconsciously. She grieves what she hoped for, not just what was. She lets go of the version of the relationship that existed only in her effort. Self-respect allows her to feel the sadness without letting it pull her back into situations that harmed her. Walking away also rewires identity. A woman who respects herself no longer defines love as endurance. She no longer equates loyalty with self-abandonment. She understands that love without safety, consistency, and respect is not love. Without safety, consistency, and respect is not love. It's attachment mixed with fear. Self-respect creates a new standard where peace becomes the minimum requirement, not a bonus. People often ask why she didn't just say more, explain more, try harder. They don't see the invisible work she already did. They didn't witness the nights spent reflecting, the conversations replayed in her head, the compromises she made quietly. Walking away is often the final step in a process that began long before anyone noticed. By the time she leaves, she is not confused. She is resolved. Self-respect also understands timing. It knows that staying too long teaches others how to treat you. Leaving at the right moment teaches yourself what you will no longer tolerate. That lesson carries forward into every future relationship, every boundary, every decision. It becomes internalized confidence, not performative confidence. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself or prove anything. Walking away is not about punishment. It's about alignment. It's about choosing environments that allow growth instead of survival. Self-respect knows that love should not require constant self-defense. It should not feel like negotiation. It should not drain more than it gives. When those conditions are absent, leaving is not dramatic. It is logical. A woman who walks away with self-respect doesn't chase closure because she understands that clarity already came through behavior. She doesn't try to control the narrative because she knows her truth doesn't depend on being believed by everyone. She doesn't seek validation for her choice because self-respect validated it first. She moves forward carrying less weight, not because she is unaffected, but because she refuses to carry what was never hers to hold. Walking away teaches restraint. It teaches that not every feeling needs to be expressed. Not every injustice needs a speech. Not every ending needs an explanation. Sometimes, the most powerful statement is absence, not as manipulation, but as self-alignment. Self-respect chooses distance over damage. When a woman walks away, she reclaims agency. She stops waiting to be chosen and chooses herself. She stops hoping someone will meet her where she stands and steps towards spaces that already do. This shift changes how she shows up everywhere. Her posture changes. Her voice steadies. Her decisions become cleaner. She no longer negotiates with her intuition. Self-respect doesn't shout. It doesn't slam doors. It closes them gently, firmly, and without looking back for approval. Walking away is the moment she honors the part of herself that stayed quiet for too long. It's the moment she listens to the discomfort she once ignored. It's the moment she accepts that staying would cost her more than leaving ever could. Walking away is not the end of strength. It is the beginning of living without internal conflict, without the constant tension of knowing something is wrong and staying anyway. Self-respect aligns thoughts, feelings, and actions into one direction, forward, without hostility, without bitterness, with clarity that doesn't need to explain itself. Silence after departure shifts power and changes the dynamic because silence removes the fuel that dysfunction depends on. Conflict survives on reaction. Manipulation survives on engagement. Disrespect survives when it still has access to your attention. The moment a woman leaves and goes silent, the familiar rhythm breaks. There is no argument to win, no emotion to provoke, no explanation to twist. Silence creates a vacuum where control used to exist, and that vacuum forces reality to surface. People often underestimate silence because it looks passive. But silence after departure is not passive. It is intentional restraint. It is the decision to stop participating in cycles that only benefit the person who causes harm. When a woman no longer reacts, she is no longer predictable, and unpredictability is what dismantles unhealthy dynamics. The power was never in the last word. It was in who could walk away without needing to be understood. Silence changes the narrative because it removes the ability to reframe events in real time. When she stays and talks, the story keeps shifting. Promises are made. Apologies appear. Blame is redirected. Silence freezes the story exactly where behavior left it. There is no opportunity to soften it, justify it, or minimize it. The absence of response becomes a mirror. What remains is what was always there. After departure, silence also exposes dependency. When someone relied on her reactions, her explanations, her emotional labor, the sudden absence creates discomfort. That discomfort is often mistaken for missing her, but it is usually the loss of access. Silence reveals whether respect was genuine or conditional. If respect only existed when she stayed engaged, it was never respect to begin with. Power shifts because silence restores internal control. As long as she is responding, she is still being pulled into the emotional orbit of the situation. Silence breaks that gravitational pull. Her nervous system calms. Her thoughts become clearer. She stops rehearsing conversations that will never happen. She stops preparing defenses for accusations that no longer reach her. Silence creates psychological distance, and distance is where healing and clarity begin. There is also a dignity in silence that words can't replicate. Explaining invites debate. Silence ends it. Defending invites attack. Silence closes the door. When a woman leaves and remains silent, she communicates boundaries without aggression. She shows that her peace is no longer negotiable. That message lands deeper than any speech ever could. Silence after departure also rewires self-trust. Each day she doesn't respond, she proves to herself that she can tolerate discomfort without betraying her decision. She learns that urgency fades when not fed, that emotions peak and pass, that she does not need to resolve everything immediately to survive it. This builds a quiet confidence that doesn't rely on external validation. People often say silence is immature, but that assumes communication is always productive. Silence becomes maturity when communication is always productive. Silence becomes maturity when communication no longer leads to understanding, growth, or change. It is maturity to recognize when dialogue has turned into a loop, when words are being used as tools rather than bridges. Silence is not avoidance when it follows clarity. It is closure without negotiation. The dynamic changes because roles change. She is no longer the one managing emotions, smoothing conflicts, or carrying responsibility for someone else's behavior. The emotional workload shifts back to where it belongs. This can feel unsettling to those who benefited from her engagement. Silence removes the cushion that absorbed consequences. Silence also protects the decision to leave. Early after departure, emotions can fluctuate. Doubt can creep in. Loneliness can distort memory. Silence creates a buffer during this vulnerable period. It prevents re-entry into conversations that reopen wounds before they've healed. It gives space for the decision to settle into the body, not just the mind. When a woman stays silent, she regains authorship over her story. She no longer explains herself to people who are committed to misunderstanding her. She lets outcomes speak. She lets distance clarify what proximity once blurred. Silence allows truth to unfold over time instead of being forced in the moment. There is a misconception that silence is meant to teach someone a lesson. In reality, silence teaches the woman herself the most. It teaches restraint. It teaches self-soothing. It teaches that peace does not come from resolution with others, but alignment within. The external impact is secondary to the internal shift that takes place. Silence also disrupts power struggles. Power struggles require two participants. When one exits quietly, the struggle collapses. There is nothing to push against, no resistance to overcome. Silence refuses to participate in games where the rules were never fair. Over time, silence becomes identity shaping. She becomes someone who doesn't rush to explain, someone who trusts her actions to speak, someone who doesn't fear being misunderstood by those who never sought to understand her. This changes how she moves in every area of life. Her boundaries become simpler. Her reactions become fewer. Her presence becomes calmer. Silence after departure is also an act of self-compassion. It acknowledges that healing does not happen in debate. It happens in safety, in rest, in removing the source of emotional volatility. Silence creates that safety by limiting exposure. The power shift is subtle but permanent. Once she experiences the stability that silence brings, chaos loses its appeal. Drama feels loud and unnecessary. She begins to recognize peace as a standard, not a reward. Silence recalibrates what feels normal. People may project their discomfort onto her silence. They may label it cold, cruel, or dismissive. But those labels often come from a loss of influence, not from genuine concern. Silence doesn't need to be defended. It stands on its own. When a woman leaves and remains silent, she closes the chapter without rewriting it for someone else's comfort. She allows the ending to be what it is. In that stillness, power settles back where it belongs, within her.